Yeah, so a formal welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a host of different attendees, like I was saying, lots of people that I recognise. Some of our lovely clients have joined us today, but also some new people and new names that I'm looking forward to getting to know you guys. Quick introduction to myself. If you don't know me already, my name is Jo Morgan. I'm one of the co-founders here at PeopleUnboxed. Little bit of background about myself. I worked for McDonald's for about 20 years. Couple of ex-Max people on here as well, which is lovely to see. So yeah, so I started off in kind of operations in McDonald's and then moved on to working in HR and kind of the learning and development teams, probably the latter sort of half of my career there. And then went away to go out on our own and set up PeopleUnboxed. A very, very warm welcome to anyone who's not joined us before. The idea of today is just, this was in relation to Learning at Work Week. We thought we'd pop on a complimentary webinar and talk about a subject that I think is really important and very relevant at the moment, and that is unconscious bias. So only a very small part, I guess, of the diversity and inclusion equation, but quite a critical part. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And a couple of little bits of housekeeping for you, and I think most of you guys are going to be familiar with this. But as I said, open up the chat box. We'll be using that as we go through the session to communicate with each other. Your lines are obviously muted. We've got a couple of poll questions as well. But for me, just get involved. Lovely to see so many chats this morning and hellos. But yeah, do get involved because that's how you guys are going to get the most out of today's session. What are we going to be covering? Well, very, very simply, three main areas, I guess. So we're going to have a look at, let's explore around equality, diversity, and inclusion. What do those terms mean? Quite often they're sort of used interchangeably, but what do they mean separately? And what's the, where do we want to be, I guess, as organisations? And then we're going to have a look at recognising biases, particularly in ourselves, all right, and then challenging ourselves to understand those and potentially change some of those. Now, I would like to call out first up, we do all have unconscious biases, so it's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about. We'll talk about where some of those come from. Morning, Lisa. We'll talk about where the sort of biology comes from and where those biases come from. So feel free to be honest and open. This is absolutely a safe environment. That's my job as a facilitator today with you. So yeah, please get stuck and get involved. I'm going to start by just opening a very, very quick poll, which you will see on your screen any second now. And no right or wrong answers, just to kind of gauge where people's thoughts are at. There's a statement there that says, I believe that everyone has biases of some description. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? And then the second one, I'm aware of my own biases. Hi, Kate. Fellow McDonald's person. So yeah, let's just take a barometer in the room. How do we feel about those statements? I believe that everyone has biases. I'm aware of my own biases. And like I said, no right or wrong answers. It's all about exploration today. Hi, Elaine. Lovely Rentkill. Oh, lovely to have you on board. Thank you. Okay, so just looking at the, I'm just going to end that there. And I'll share the results with you. Like I said, no right or wrong answers, but so most of us are saying that everyone has biases of some description. 95% of you are saying that, or at least the ones that answered. And then a lot of you are saying you're aware of your own biases, which is great to see. I guess I would probably challenge that a little bit because I think unconscious bias is so complicated. Our biases and the way our brains work is naturally so complicated. There probably are some bits that we're not aware of, and of course it's great to be able to keep challenging, keep learning about those, keep challenging ourselves on that as well, which is the aim of today. So let's have a look at equality, diversity and inclusivity, and just kind of pull out the differences of some of those definitions and some of those terms that, like I said, they're often used synonymously, and people can get confused about the differences. And and what they mean and how they are different. So jump on the chat for me. What do we understand by equality? First up, what do we understand by equality? We probably think in our minds this is easier to define than maybe it is once I say, yeah, pop it in the chat. But what do we think equality is? Equal opportunity. Every human has the same opportunities. Yeah. Everyone equal, has same rights. Yeah. Yeah, and Chris saying regardless of background. Yeah, and equality is quite often rooted, isn't it, in the protected characteristics. But very simply, equality is exactly what you're saying. It's about fairness and equal opportunity. Now, does this mean treating everyone the same? Is equality about treating everyone the same? Yes or no? Yeah, absolutely, Becca. Becca, just pop yours to everyone, your little drop down list to everyone, and then others can see your lovely insights. Yeah, individuality has got to be recognised. Absolutely, it's more about fairness, and it's about creating an even playing field so that everyone has the same opportunities. So it's recognising how to support people as individuals, like exactly as a lot of you were calling out there. So if for example, just calling out one example, if someone was dyslexic, for example, should they be treated exactly the same as somebody else? Well, the answer is yeah, no, they shouldn't be. It's about giving everyone equal opportunities, catering for everyone as individuals, and supporting their individual needs. So we've all got an even playing field. We can all succeed. No worries, Malika. Oh, I hope you can come back on. Yeah, no worries. What about diversity then? What about diversity as a term? What do we understand by that? What do we mean by diversity? Recognizing the differences in everyone. Michaela's saying, yeah. Natalie's saying, practice equality of including or involving people from a range of different social, ethnic backgrounds. Yeah, different genders, all of that good stuff. Yeah. Claire's saying recognizing that everyone is different, just to pull out a couple of answers, including people from different backgrounds. Natalie's saying, yeah, absolutely. So diversity, somebody once said to me, we should be blind to people's differences, which is a lovely idea. But actually, that's not what it's about. It's about embracing and recognizing people's differences and also acknowledging the benefits that brings, the different perspectives in decision making, different personalities, not just protected characteristics. And then inclusion, of course, is making people feel like they belong, feel like they're listened to, like they have a say, and they're made to feel part of something, part of the team or part of the organisation. So diversity, if you like, is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Now, as we said, equality is quite often rooted in the Equality Act. We quite often root equality in law. Can anyone name a couple of the protected characteristics? I know we've got lots of people on today from sort of HR or L&D teams, so I thought I wouldn't just tell you the characteristics. You guys probably can call out at least a few of them. So can anyone remember? There's 9 in total. Age, absolutely. Gender, yeah. Disability. Marital status, definitely. Religion, sexual orientation, yeah, you got it. Pretty much all of them there. So yeah, you can see the 9. Yeah, nice one, Kate. Yeah, you can see the 9 characteristics there. So equality is based in law. And it's about ensuring that people are not discriminated against in the workplace or treated less favorably based on these nine characteristics. And I'm sure there's not anything too surprising there in those 9 characteristics. But this is only from a legal standpoint. So if we're not abiding by this, we are discriminating. But actually, like we said, equality is much more than just the legal stance. And then it's about making an even playing field way beyond each of these 9 characteristics. It's about personalities and all of that other good stuff that makes us us. And of course, diversity and inclusion go way beyond that. So diversity and inclusion is about creating, having diverse cultures and creating a culture where people's differences are embraced and people feel included. So just to summarize, diversity and inclusion is around recognizing that there are differences and valuing them. And we need to be able to do this in a multicultural society that we live in today. We need to be able to develop the ability to incorporate differences and bring them into the culture within our organizations. We need to understand our own and others' identity and our beautiful uniquenesses, right? We're all very, very individual, and creating then, therefore, an environment where we feel that we belong. Now, there are some obvious benefits of this, and I know this will be no surprising news to you guys, but valuing diversity benefits by helping you gain a better understanding of their needs. It means that you've got more effective communication, more effective working environment. You're going to get more creative, innovative ideas because you've got lots of unique perspectives at the table, if you like. And not least, it provides an enhanced reputation for your organizations, right? People naturally want to be in an environment where they feel included and valued. Also, having that environment, that culture in your organization means that you're going to have access to a wider pool of knowledge and skills, and be able to recruit easier and also retain people. So no surprises there. But it also reduces stress. All right, and that's a really key one. So people that feel safe and feel like they are valued, feel like they belong, are less stressed, and they're also more creative. They are more able to be themselves and bring their ideas to the table. Now, one of the particular studies that I really like, actually, that kind of calls this out, is it's a McKinsey & Co study, and it said companies in the bottom 25% in terms of D&I are 29% less likely to be profitable than the top 75%. Now, that's quite a staggering statistic, isn't it? So, companies, there are absolute tangible benefits for organizations to get this right. Now, I said a second ago, I mentioned people that feel emotionally safe. They feel valued and they feel included. They feel like they can bring their ideas to the table. They are less stressed. And this is called psychological safety, essentially, right? So emotional safety. Has anyone come across this before? It's becoming quite a common term, actually. So yeah, give me a quick yes if this is something, or a principle at least, that you've encountered in your career so far. Yeah, a few yeses coming in. Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming more and more common. And I guess actually, I'm probably asking, as I said, people that are probably largely working in this sphere. And I wonder if we asked our sort of ground roots of the organization, whether they'd heard this, whether they would be able to translate this and relate to it. So psychological safety is around allowing people to feel included and embraced for their individuality. And it means that they feel safe. Like we all have safe places in our lives, probably when we're at home, or, I don't know, whether it's with our best friend or our significant other or whoever it is, or family. We have places in our lives where we feel safe. People might finish our sentences for us. We feel safe to, be ourselves, and they just get us, they think the best in us. And we want that at work. We want people to be able to take risks. There's a really interesting study, actually, in hospitals, and they found that they were looking at the number of mistakes hospitals reported. and then correlated that to the standard of care, I guess. So the rating that the hospital was graded at. Okay. And you would kind of expect, right? And certainly this study expected to find out that the hospitals with the least amount of mistakes were the ones that were rated the highest. And actually what they found was the hospitals that were reporting the most amount of mistakes were rated the highest. And that is really powerful, right? So in the hospital that was rated had the most amount of mistakes, rated for reporting the most amount of mistakes, that was reported the highest as well, because people weren't afraid to report mistakes. They were, that was embraced. They were learning from their mistakes. They were talking about it openly. They could openly bring that to the table. They felt accepted and safe to do that. And therefore, they were dealing with those mistakes, and they were, bringing them out and talking about them. They were very prevalent, and therefore they were, improving their the service that they were providing. So really powerful statistic. And I guess the question is, how psychologically safe are our work environments? How do you think, how many of your people do you think are going to be able to feel safe, or do feel safe in bringing forward their ideas, their mistakes when they make them, silly questions and, all of that good stuff? Can we truly be ourselves at work? And that's probably quite a deep question, probably deeper than we have time for in today's short session. But let's have a look at recognizing our own biases. So we've introduced the concepts of ED and I. And let's have a look at recognizing our own biases now. And what I want you to do, please don't do this if you're driving the car or anywhere not safe. But if you are safe to do so, please close your eyes for a few minutes. And I just want to take you through a couple of scenarios. So try to forget about the session for a minute. And what I want you to do is hear what I'm saying and just picture what's going on in your head. So scenario one, at the airport on the way to a lovely holiday with your loved ones. Could be family, could be your kids, could be friends, significant other, whatever. You're feeling very happy. Okay. You take off and suddenly you feel some turbulence. And it's quite rough and you're getting a little bit scared. And the pilot flies through the turbulence, settles the plane, then comes out to speak to all the passengers. So just picture that. Who do you see? Scenario two, you enter the doctor's surgery. There's a new GP who you're meeting for the first time. The waiting room isn't too busy. You're going to be seen soon. And you notice a young couple with a small baby. So just picture that. The baby smiles at you, you smile back, you notice the parents there smiling at you too. Then you hear your name on the tannoy and you walk into the surgery room. You say hello to the doctor. And they seem very friendly. What are you picturing? Third scenario for you. You're entering a big hall with many colleagues. Your company has invited a successful CEO to come and talk to you today and give a speech in your town hall or whatever your group meetings are called. And everyone's really excited to see this CEO and hear what they've got to say and learn about how they've become so awesome. And the CEO walks onto stage with this huge smile and says, "Hello." So what are you picturing? Now, as we said, unconscious biases are absolutely natural. So let's just think for a sec. How did we picture each of those scenarios? It'll be different for all of us. So the first story was about a pilot. Did the pilot who flew you through turbulence to safety, did they look like this? So jump on chat. Who did you picture? Did they look like this? Be honest, like we just said, psychological safety, absolutely safe environment. And all of this will depend on our experiences. So what did that pilot look like for you? Yeah, man, Kim, absolutely. Yeah, there'll be a lot. Yeah, white male, saying. Yeah, automatically pictured a male. Yeah, and there's no right or wrongs in this, right? This is all about recognizing our own biases and challenging them. That's the critical thing. We absolutely have them, and you know that will be because probably when we were growing up, over time, you know, we've come to learn that you know there were predominantly probably male pilots, or predominantly we have been on planes where the pilot was male, and that's what we sort of become to, you know, come to associate in our minds. So it's absolutely automatic reaction. Now, this is actually a real person. Her name is Captain Patty Marsh, and this is her taking her last flight. Now, you can imagine that getting to be a pilot was quite a long journey for her, but that's another story. So this is the couple in the doctor's surgery with the beautiful baby. Did you picture them to be like this? So you remember there was that baby smiling at us. The couple smiled at us as well. Did you picture them to be like this? Yeah. Yeah, don't be ashamed, Elaine. Don't be ashamed. Absolutely not. Now, inherently, and just calling that out, Elaine, inherently we know that, you know, absolutely this could happen. And, you know, and most of us pride ourselves on not, you know, being discriminatory or any kind of biases or prejudice in any way. You know, we would call ourselves out quite proudly for embracing diversity, I'm sure. So yeah, don't. Didn't think of the parents. Kate was focusing on the baby. Yeah, absolutely. And then the doctor, remember we went into the doctor's surgery. So what about that new friendly doctor? What did they look like? Did they look like this? Yeah. Interesting. And again, you know, not our fault. It will be white male as your GP. Say he's white male. Absolutely. Or pictured a female. And again, yeah. Yes, my own GP. Okay, yeah, Kat's got it. So Kat's saying, yes, my own GP is a black man. But it's chance, isn't it? It's absolutely chance because it's based on our own experiences. So, you know, if typically we've had, whether that's growing up or whether that's now, a doctor, you know, of a certain gender, a certain ethnicity, then that's probably what we're picturing. And what about the friendly CEO, the really successful CEO who's walked on stage and beamed a lovely smile at us and said hello? You know, did she look like this? And again, the chances are probably not. Probably not. We may have, you know, whether that's thinking, whether that's imagining, again, probably naturally a male. It might be somebody who is a bit older because, you know, we're assuming that they're successful and, you know, maybe they've been around for a little bit longer. Claire's saying yes, yeah. And it just to paint you out, like I can't emphasize this enough, there is no right or wrong here, all right? It's based on our own experiences. It does not mean that we have, you know, sexist, racist, homophobic views. Absolutely it does not. And it certainly doesn't make us a bad person. But the reason that we are reflecting on these pictures in such different ways is largely due to our unconscious bias. And to explain that, which I promised I would do, because it is rooted in biology, all right? And the challenge here is we can't always change what is deep-rooted within us, but we can challenge our norm and we can challenge our behaviours. And that's what unconscious bias is all about. So just to understand unconscious bias, we need to understand the brain. And this is a simple model. Some of you may have come across this before, by Dr. Steve Peters, and it's called The Chimp Paradox. It's a book, actually, that he's written. Really good book. If you're interested in your next exciting read, that's definitely one. Now, the brain has two parts. In fact, he talks about three parts. We're going to focus on two here. And that is our chimp brain and our human brain. And our chimp brain is our primal emotional brain. It's all about survival, and it reacts to anything that could be a potential threat. All right. It's our fight, flight, freeze part of our brain. Our human brain, on the other hand, is our logical, rational thinking brain. This is where we think up solutions to problems. This is where we use reasoning. And we'd like to think we make all of our decisions there, right? Now, of course, we'd love to think that, but we don't. We don't always use our human, rational, logical thinking brain. Now, all events we're faced with are filtered through our chimp brain, and it's 5 times stronger. It's 5 times quicker. It's designed to spot threats, and it's designed to spot patterns. Okay, our chimp brain is only concerned with our survival, so it perceives anything as different, anything that doesn't follow the pattern, as a threat. Okay, so historically we would have had a primal response to a shadow of a wolf, for example. Right, we're not going to wait around to find out whether that shadow is the real deal or not. We're out of there. And it's true of babies as well. If you've got young children in your life, or had young children in your life, in the first weeks of life, babies recognize familiar shapes of faces. And if anyone's been a parent or been around babies, you know that they recognize very quickly their significant caregivers. And I remember doing this with my kids when they were born. Suddenly, I put wear my hair down. Normally it was, screwed up. And suddenly wear my hair down and they don't recognize me. I'll tell you another quick story that certainly Debs will relate to, being on the call today. I remember taking my first child to meet a very good friend of mine it was an ex-colleague of mine, and she was a Black African lady. And it was the first time, just because of the demographics where I live, it was the first time, I think Jessica was only like, I don't know, very young, like 3 weeks old maybe. And I remember seeing her face the first time that, my lovely friend picked her up. And this friend couldn't be more, she was just like the warmest person ever. But to, a very young baby, they're just spotting patterns. And this was different to anything she had seen before. She hadn't met a Black person. And, you could kind of see her face in that first instant, seconds. And then, of course, within seconds as well, she was reassured by my voice and by, my friend's voice. So it moved on very, very quickly. But of course, in that second, you can see it, and it's primal. Babies don't, they just aren't discriminatory. So it's absolutely, rooted in our biology. And how often do we make decisions based purely on emotion, which we often regret later and ask ourselves, why do we react like that? And that's where the phrase count to 10 comes from, because our chimp takes 5 seconds to react. If we count to 10, that gives us enough time for our human, logical, rational brain to kick in. Okay, so it's almost impossible, and at least very, very difficult to remove our biases, because it's rooted in our survival instincts. But we can accept it and start to challenge our biases. Okay, now there's actually over 150 types of biases. You'll be pleased to know we're only going to touch on these 3 today. Otherwise, that would be a much longer webinar and a lot of explaining. The 3 most common ones here you can see. So affinity bias is the tendency to gravitate towards people who are like us. Now, that could be a protected characteristic. So it could be, we prefer to work with, I don't know, straight women. Or it might be sort of more along personality traits. I love nothing more than to brainstorm with other yellow creatives, if you're familiar with Insights, or working with somebody who's an extrovert. So what it is we gravitate, this pattern recognition. We gravitate towards things that we recognize, things that we are familiar with. Confirmation bias is a tendency to seek out evidence that confirms our initial assumptions. And if you think about things like news networks, particularly in the US, right, we'd like to think our news networks in the UK are a bit more independent. Actually, they're probably not. We go, as consumers, we pick up a certain type of newspaper all the time. Or, if you think about social media, we join certain social media groups, and then social media recommends other groups that are just like that. Or we might, go looking for a particular group that is going to teach us, something. I remember doing this when I was a new parent, seeking out groups about parenting, and they said something to me about my beliefs in parenting, and then of course I'm surrounded by people that are just going to confirm my beliefs in how I should parent. So confirmation bias is can be quite dangerous, this echo culture. And of course it even extends to I don't know, things like Netflix, right? So again, whatever programs it is we watch, Netflix then, recommends other programs like that. So we have this echo culture. And actually it's important that we challenge this and step outside of our comfort zone. Perception bias, the last one there, is the tendency to stereotype certain groups of people without being able to make objective decisions about them. And that is exactly what we just did in a lot of what we did in those pictures. And we stereotype based on our experiences. All right. And that's a third part of the brain that Steve Peters talks about. He talks about the computer brain, and that's almost like our filing system. It's storing all of our experiences as we go through childhood and young adulthood, and then we very, very quickly make assumptions based on them. So we have to recognize first up that we all have biases. The main part now is about challenging them, right? So I'm going to take you through a couple of scenarios to help us do that. So as we say, we're not going to be able to remove our biases completely, but we can challenge them. And this is what, great leaders that we might look up to, they aren't perfect either. None of us are perfect. It's just about recognizing it and challenging it, becoming more self-aware. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. And there's sort of 4 steps here, and I'm going to take you a bit of a whistle-stop tour really around these 4 steps. Like we said, the first one is to become aware. Now, one of the things you can do to do this, and I'm going to share a link with you now, is complete things like online self-assessments. And there's a really good one. This has got literally hundreds of self-assessments on it. You might have come across it before. It's by the Harvard Business Review. So yeah, have a look at that link, and there's like I say, a number on there. So the first step is sort of becoming aware of our biases. Okay, so calling them out, and they might not be what you expect them to be. Also, in becoming aware, we want to kind of recognize what our trusted sort of inner circle look like. So just quickly, you probably won't get to 10, but write down the names of your most trusted people. So not your family, and just really quick, give it a quick scribble. Who comes to mind off the cuff? Your most trusted people. So whether that is people at work, whether that is your friends that you turn to, who do you turn to with an important task, an important project, or if you need help? Scribble a few names down there. Not family, because they're not people you choose, as it is. And then again, you're not going to get to do this all in today's session, but then I challenge you to then sort of populate the rest of this table if you like. So think about those, however many numbers you got, 2, 5, or 10 people that you wrote down. What about their gender? What about their race? What about their age? What about their, sexual orientation or education? And if you're honest with yourselves, it's very likely you'll see some patterns there, whether that is, they're all similar ages, or whether that is, they're friends from university, therefore they've got similar levels of education, or whether that is, they're all kind of, I don't know, from a group of parent friends, and, the status is typically married with kids, whatever that is. Again, it will be down to your own environment. Now, again, don't be harsh on yourselves. Does this mean that you are discriminatory in any way? No, it doesn't. But you can use this as an honesty mirror. Okay, so if you are seeing patterns, I'm not saying go and recruit local friends, or go and actively recruit a certain ethnicity into your friend group, but it is a little bit of an honesty mirror. Okay, and where that really comes into play is within our circle of trust. So when we're in organizations, we have different levels of trust. We have people that are in our inner sanctum, that's level 3. The majority of people we know, we come across, are in level 1. Okay, so these are kind of our people we're associated with, people we know of, and gradually as we get to know people, they move into level 2, our sort of second circle in, and these might be guys folks that we catch up with regularly. We might go for lunch with them, we might pick up the phone to them regularly. And then we've got our inner sanctum, okay, which could be our trusted 10 if that was in a work environment. Now that is the smallest group. Now if I challenge you again, if you've got a really important project, you've got a really important high visibility task or something that's really important at work, where are you going to delegate that to? If you need somebody to help you with that, or you need people on your team to work on that project, where is that going to go? Where are you going to give that? And the likely answer is it's going to be level 3, right? It's going to be your inner sanctum, because these are the people that you trust the most. But if we're really honest with ourselves, and just go back to your earlier exercise, you know, if you're really honest, probably your inner sanctum, because they're people you trust, your brain is spotting patterns. They're going to be people similar to you, whether that is personality traits, whether they're, you know, mostly extroverts, whether they're mostly certain color profiles. And of course, by doing that, we're limiting the diversity of thought, we're limiting the innovation. So we need to challenge ourselves. We need to become aware, and then we need to identify our triggers and challenge ourselves. Okay. So when you are looking to allocate that project, you know, how can you step out? How can you challenge yourselves to bring people into that project team or that decision making, whatever it is, that aren't like you? Okay. If we carry on operating in that level 3, we're going to get the same results. We're going to get that echo culture. So let's have a look at identifying our triggers. That's the second step. And again, I'm going to take you through just a very quick couple of ideas around this. To be able to recognize, once we're aware of our biases, we then need to identify when they're most likely to come out. Okay. Now, if you remember back to the chimp human brain model, our biases are most likely to come out when we are working in our chimp brain, right? So that is when we feel naturally under threat, and we haven't managed to kind of shift ourselves into, let's think about this rationally, you know, let's challenge ourselves. And there's a couple of places, I guess, where we naturally get triggered. Okay. And quite often, one of the critical points of our own triggers are our personal values. It's when our values get challenged, or when somebody works against our values. Okay, now our values can be a whole host of things. I'm just going to get you to do this really quickly. So jot down 3 values out of that list. What are your top 3 values? And I'm going to deliberately do this really quick pace, because I want you to kind of go with your gut. So out of all those values that you can see on the screen there, jot down your top 3. Now, I want you to imagine you're going on holiday with your 3 values. Unfortunately, you're on the Titanic. All right, might have been a lovely cruise ship. It's not. It's the Titanic. Oh, excuse me, phone's ringing. I thought that was on silent. Your boat is the Titanic, and you're sinking. So you've got to get into the lifeboat. Now, you can only take 2 values with you. There is only room for 2 on the lifeboat. So cross one out. You're throwing it overboard. You're throwing it overboard. Really quick, just cross one out. Okay, so we're on that lifeboat. We're nearly at shore. You now got to swim the rest of the way. All right, now we can't swim with no arms, so you've only got one arm to put one value under. Which one are you taking to shore? Which is the other one that you are throwing overboard? And pop in the chat, what value did you end up with? What is your top value? Quite honesty, yeah. It feels quite a brutal activity, doesn't it? Like, it's really hard to get, it's really hard to get 3, let alone get it down to 1. And that's deliberately quick pace, because you're forced then to kind of go with your gut reaction. Now, your values absolutely will center around your biggest trigger points. All right. So Emma, for example, there is saying fairness. If somebody operates in a way that, Emma feels is going against or deemed unfair to Emma, then, that's going to trigger you. And that's where, again, once we're in our chimp, operating in our chimp mode, we are quite often using our unconscious biases and our, kind of fast, quick, instinctive, primal responses, as opposed to thinking rationally. Another way of identifying our triggers is using the ladder of inference. Has anyone come across this before? Yeah, a couple of you might have done. So the ladder inference, and this links to chimp brain as well. The ladder inference is basically saying that our brains process so many bits of information every day. And our brains, again, biologically, as we said from with the chimp human model, they're designed to interpret things really quickly and make very, very quick decisions. Okay, and we do this day in, day out. We make assumptions based on previous experience, based on things that we can see clearly right there and then. And what it means is we shoot up this kind of ladder, right? So we're seeing the data, we're selecting what we think is the right data, we're adding our own kind of meanings to that based on our assumptions or based on our historic reference points and experiences, and then we draw conclusions. All right. And the dangerous part of that is we then might take actions on those conclusions. And the ladder of inference is very, very simply just saying, count to 10 again, step back down that ladder. Are we actually observing and drawing the right conclusions, or have we just jumped to conclusions? We've all heard about the phrase 2 + 2 equaling 5. And this is exactly it. All right. So we might, somebody might be late to a meeting. We automatically think, well, they're not a team player, and therefore, I'm not going to kind of allocate them this really important task. Whereas actually, if we break it down, what is the reason they're late? And, there might be something else at play there, very likely to be something else at play there. And it's not actually a signal or defining that this person is unreliable in any way. So challenging ourselves. Then, of course, we need to consider our actions. Okay, now, to do this, we need to slow down. All right, to actually consider our actions, we need to be in our human brain. And that involves getting over those first 5 seconds, as we talked about. So next time you notice a trigger, slow down, pause, and really consider your actions. Okay, make sure you are operating in your human brain. Make sure that you're just aware of when you might be reacting on your triggers, and when you might be, able to think logically and rationally. Now, quite often our actions, even though we might be trying to consider them rationally, quite often our actions speak louder than our words. And this is one of the things to keep an eye on. So micro messages are signals that we send to one another through our behavior. So it could be something we say, it could be the words we use, it could be the body language we're using, or the tone of voice we're using, the facial expressions we're pulling. My husband always, when he's talking to me, if he's saying something that I'm like, where are you going with this? And I quite often pull this kind of frowny face, and he's like, can you stop doing that? Because I haven't even got to my point yet, and you're already making me feel uncomfortable because I'm already questioning, what's his motive here, or where's he going with this, with what he's saying. So we do it without thinking, and again, it's sort of reflexive. And the critical part here is our messages need to be congruent. So whilst we may be at a point where we're considering our actions, right? We're in our human brain, or we're at least trying to challenge ourselves. Be conscious of what your red light micro messages are doing at this point. Okay, because we might be, like I do with my husband, pulling a face, or we might be, doing something that is making them feel discouraged or excluded, or just not what our words are saying, or not what we want our rational reaction to be. Okay. Very easily done. Again, it's all rooted in biology, isn't it? And then the last thing that we can do to challenge our own biases is, once we've considered our actions, we've got to challenge what our own norm is, all right? And equally challenge those around us. And this is the most important thing I think we can all do. We want to grow up in a world that is improving and getting better each day, and we want to leave the kind of the world in a certain way for our children and next generations. And we can only do that by challenging ourselves first up, and challenging others around us. So engaging our human brain, restricting our chin, recognizing that, is human nature, that's okay. And some of that we can't control, but there are things that are in our control. And then just take a little shift. Just do a small thing differently. Just challenge our norm in just a very, very small way. Whether that be having, someone different take the minutes of a meeting, for example, or going out our way to ask the opinion of somebody who's normally quiet in the room, or who normally doesn't, openly offer their opinion up. And then when you've done this, reflect on it and find the positives of doing those things differently. And of course, that will naturally encourage your behaviours to do more of it. So what kind of things can we do? How can we challenge ourselves and others? Jump on the chat for this one. So imagine we're in a situation where we've spotted some kind of inappropriate behaviour in our workplace or within our family, friend network, whatever it is. What kind of things could we do to challenge that? Or what kind of things don't we want to do to challenge that? Imagine we're in a awkward situation. We spotted something that we really, it gut feel. We know it's not right. What are we going to do? Yeah, absolutely. Breathe in, call it out. Definitely, right? Definitely don't ignore it. It's one of the things we don't want to do. Definitely call it out. Definitely saying go for a walking meeting. So yeah, rather than the office, break down some of those barriers. Go somewhere that's comfortable and neutral, maybe. Step back and think. Absolutely, Natalie. Just kind of process through how are you gonna deal with this? Definitely. And let's imagine we are in a meeting, right? And something, we're kind of in a, let's say it's a face-to-face meeting, and somebody, says or does something that we kind of, oh no, that's not comfortable. I don't like that. I guess there's two schools of thought, right? We could call it out right there and then, or we could wait until after the meeting. And I always kind of think of this a little bit like dealing with children, which I don't mean in a condescending way, but if my children do something that might not be kind, or might not be a nice empathetic way to respond to another human or whatever, or interact with another person, I could choose to kind of call it out and go, actually that's not right, tell them off for it. But actually the most impactful way of doing that is demonstrating the right way. Okay. So instead of, you're absolutely right, we call it out. Definitely, you don't want to let it lie. It might be that you take it out of the room and call it out afterwards. It might be that you can kind of, model the right way. And it might be just simple, like saying, actually, I think what so-and-so meant by that was, and then just reframing, what they're saying, because it's kind of a nice way of gently educating them that actually there was a better way to phrase that, or whatever it was. But also, you're instantly easing the other person who might be on the receiving end, who feels very awkward right now, and maybe a bit taken aback, maybe a bit upset. You've dealt with it in the here and now. Because the downside of taking it outside of that meeting is that the person who was on the receiving end of that, do they know that you've dealt with it? Do they feel emotionally safe that that is being called out? Totally depends on the situation you're in, doesn't it? But I think don't ignore it, don't dismiss it. Absolutely. To recap some of the things on the screen, don't make or find excuses. Challenge them in a calm and professional manner, or lead by example. If you do need to have that conversation offline, explain the impact of the behavior. And a great model to use for this is AID. If you've come across that before, I'll pop that in the chat for you, actually, because you can always Google it afterwards. But the AID feedback model is a great way of dealing with these kind of conversations. And that is just simply talking through what were the actions, what was the impact of that, and then what can you do differently? So actions, impact, do different. So I can see that this is what happened. These were the actions you took, or this was the behavior you observed in that moment of this person. Actually, the impact of that is X, Y, and Z. Next time, I think you could phrase it like this, or next time I think you could do it differently, like X, Y, and Z. Okay, it's a really simple way and a great way of dealing with this kind of thing. Focus on the behavior, not the person, because chances are, right, we've learned from today's session, chances are they didn't mean it. It's rooted in biology. We're kind of held to ransom by our chimp brain in many ways. So we are all on this learning journey, and we need to support each other, support ourselves to recognize where we can do differently, but also support others to recognize ways that they can do different. And then, just as I was saying a second ago, offer support to the person on the receiving end. Make sure that they understand that we don't endorse this. This is not the environment that we're trying to create. Call out to them what you've done to challenge that. It says record and report the incident there. Now, I think, just with my HR hat on, of course, we've got those formal channels there. But, more often than not, these things are unintended. And it's a question of just kind of having that human touch conversation, and just coaching people through calling out, a different way to approach that situation. How could they have done that differently? But there will, inevitably be, there may be circumstances which are a little bit more serious, and you do need to follow those formal channels. And of course, they're always there for you. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes of our time together, let's just have a quick recap of what we've learned. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your key takeaway from what we've talked about in our time together this morning? Jump on the chat again. Just give me, is there one thing you're going to go away and do? And of course, some of those things we sort of did a bit of a whistle stop tour. Count to 10, Devs, absolutely. And it might be that you want to go and reflect on your circle of trust a little bit more. There's some ideas on the screen there. That link there is the Harvard link that I shared with you in the chat. So it might be as simple as, let's go and look at my own biases. Is there anything surprising there? Review your own circle of trust, and like I said, you're not going to suddenly go and recruit a new friend circle, but can you challenge yourself more in terms of how that impacts the decisions you make at work? Who do you choose to bring in? Each person has a learned behavior breed. Absolutely, yeah. So recognizing that. Consider my own unconscious biases in conversations and decisions. Definitely, Chris is saying, challenge my own bias using those 4 steps. Yeah. Really thought, right? Yeah, because like I said at the beginning, we like to think that we're not, discriminatory. We do, we like to think of ourselves as kind, positive individuals, but inevitably, there's a lot of science that says it's human nature. And actually, the biggest thing we can do is be kind to ourselves and recognize that, and just make those little changes where we can. Think twice and be open-minded. Deanna saying, extend your EDI training to include UB. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so powerful, isn't it? Imagine if everyone kind of recognized that in themselves and recognized where that was coming from. And honestly, I could talk around this topic for hours. There's so much more we could cover. It's a real whistle stop in the hour we had together. Becca's saying, consider circle of trust. Yeah, definitely. And what I'd love you to do, folks, is just make yourselves, when you close down your browser now, just make yourselves a note to come back to this in a week's time. All right. And just say to yourself, have I done anything with this? You know, I've given up an hour of my time to learn some new things. What have I done with this? So just make a mental note or pop it in your calendar for this time next week. What have you done? And just hold yourselves to account with that a little bit.